Hello writers, come write with me. My name is Michaela Greenwood. I create worlds for mind adventures. Welcome to my channel, Write with Michaela. Don't forget to like and subscribe and hit the bell so you can go on this journey with me. Excuse me. Today is Friday, which is story time, or the day of our chapter exchange. But before we start today, yesterday was March 14th, and I started this channel last year on Tuesday, March 14th. So I'm celebrating 1 year with you, my viewers. Thank you for joining me. I really appreciate it. It's been a lot of fun. I've done a lot of learning myself. I've also had to upgrade my writing game. So I've really enjoyed this channel. And I am looking forward now to this year number 2. If you are writing with me and you wish to exchange chapters, then send your chapter with written permission to writewithmichaela@gmail.com. I will post the email address at the end of the video. I'm looking forward to reading your chapters, even if I can't read them all on the channel. All chapters read on Fridays, whether they are mine or another writer's work, are copyright protected material, and no one may use any part in writing their own stories. This story is PG-13, so if you are under 13 years of age, you need parental guidance. The story is in its rough draft stage, just as the last 2 stories we heard. The title of this story is Elloni's Pride. And today we are reading chapter 9 out of book 1. If you would like to read along, then send to the email I stated earlier and request a PDF of the chapter. Make sure you are specific. Now, let's start. Elloni's Pride, book 1, Breaking Point. This is chapter 9, Browser's Escape. Excuse me. The tailors watched the soldiers all morning, even when the other tailors joined them. The tailors were invisible as they flew in, but they landed on the stands. But as they landed on the stands, they blended themselves in with the wooden benches. Now it seemed like the soldiers were going inside, so the tailors began discussing things. The really big one filled his water sack 3 times. But the others only filled their sack once. Yes, I noticed that. And the really big one won all the fights he fought. So we want Libya to get big so she can win. Well, should she start drinking more water now or once she gets big? Many didn't know. But they decided that they would tell Felicity when they returned and let her decide. They invisibly fluttered down into the sparring area and looked at all the equipment and decided which equipment they would shrink and take with them, although they didn't take anything yet. They had decided that they needed to watch the sparring one more day. They also decided to sleep under the benches that night, so for now they would invisibly explore the castle and see if they could learn anything, and they would meet back out here when it got dark. There were 48 tailors, and they would explore in groups of 3. So they had 16 groups. Excuse me. Lydia and Soflin came out of the passage, but they were still in the mountains. Lydia recognized things from her visions, so she led the way. Soflin didn't know the land so well in this area, but had viewed a few maps and felt they might be traveling on open grasslands. She thought there might be some prairie with tall grasses, but with the openness she thought about invisibility. She could do the charm herself, but she wanted Lydia to be able to do it too. Then Soflin thought of Bradley. He seemed to pick up on the magic quite easily, so perhaps Lydia would too. "Lydia," she said. Lydia stopped and looked back. "Did I turn the wrong way?" Soflin chuckled. "Oh, no. I trust you to know your vision, so that's not the problem. In your vision, did we need to cross some open grassland? I don't remember what all you said. Actually, it doesn't matter. We have time for you to learn and for me to teach. So that's what we're going to do. Okay, agreed Lydia, as she held out her hand to Soflin. Soflin took her hand and then taught her the words to make herself invisible. And the words to extend the invisibility to someone or something else. Lydia memorized the words, and she practiced as they walked along. Soflin was excited that Lydia could make herself invisible. She thought, maybe we will get back to a time when magic flourishes again. Oh, I hope so. The little ones started stirring, so Hushman got them up to continue walking. He wanted them to be as far from the village as possible before the next full moon, or before the soldiers' next visit, whichever came first. He noticed that they paired up the same way that they had when they were in the river yesterday, and he expected that while walking that would be the case. But once they stopped again, the different ages would gravitate together. He wasn't sure, and he wasn't worried about it, especially since everyone seemed to get along so far. Hushman thought of Bradley, and he wondered if he had found the older boy Linker. And he thought of Lydia, and wondered if she had found her sister. Somewhere deep within himself he felt they would find each other again, but he felt that might be a long time off yet. Today they found berries, and he knew the two women picked extra berries and wrapped them in a cloth for later. All of them would have to continue to be on the lookout for more wild food and seeds. If wild food had gone to seed and was no longer edible, that didn't mean they shouldn't save the seeds to grow for whenever they got to settle down. While things were peaceful, Hushman listened to the birds and enjoyed the breezes, and he watched each person for a while, so he would get to know them and know when something was amiss. He had known Bradley the best of his children, but that was partially because of Bradley's age. And of course he knew his wife. He hoped Bradley would think with him, and he could get the words to the charm, and he actually thought he would cast it on Kosher first. If it worked, he would give Kosher the words and suggest Kosher cast the charm on Kala, and he would cast it on his wife. He didn't know how many he could do, and he wasn't really thinking about limits. He just wanted their whole group connected. It was a bright, sunny day, but the hottest days of summer had already passed. That was another thing to be thankful for. The group walked along in thought, or just silence, and enjoyed the birds and the shades of the trees. Bradley was feeling the vibrations very intensely now, and he wasn't sure what that meant. He hoped it meant they were nearing Broman. Then he heard a noise, so he thought to Coulter, "Coulter, take the bundle and hide in that bush." He handed over the bundle and pointed. Coulter's eyes were wide, but he took the bundle and hid in the bush. Bradley crouched down behind a tree. He couldn't see anything, so he walked in a crouch to the next tree. He kept his ears and eyes peeled. Coulter was scared, so he pulled his knees up and wrapped his arms around his legs. He didn't want to watch, but he didn't want Bradley to leave him either. Bradley heard another noise, like a crack of a stick, so he peered around. Finally, he saw Broman. He raised up and stepped out from behind the tree. "Broman, where's your dragon?" Broman looked up startled. Then Bradley noticed his hair. "What happened to you? Did you strike your stones too close to your face?" "My face? My stones?" started Broman. "No, I've not used my stones even once. I don't need stones. That stupid dragon, I told him to go away. He tried to cut my hair, but instead he caught me on fire." "You need your dragon," stated Bradley. He turned back to Coulter. "Come on, Coulter, you can come out." Coulter came out and carried the bundle before him. Bradley took the bundle and introduced the two boys. His arm hasn't shown yet, so his dragon is still an egg. Coulter pushed his eyebrows together. I told you my arm shone, stated Coulter. He held his arm out and then moved it to where he could hold his arm between the links of shadows of the trees and where the sun could hit it. Bradley sighed inwardly. Started Brumman. Now that's the sun shining, not your arm. He set his bundle down and showed Coulter his arm. After your arm shines, there will be a mark. Oh, said Coulter, disappointed. Can you find your dragon again? Asked Bradley. Brumman shrugged. Probably, or he will find me. Brumman rubbed the symbol. Brumman received. I almost to you. I followed the sun like you said. I didn't know when to go away from the sun, but now I almost to you. Brumman turned around and looked between the trees. He says he's almost here, stated Brumman. Coulter looked up at Bradley, and he was about to tell the other boy that Bradley was already here and that no one spoke. But before he said anything, Bradley asked, Is he red? Brumman pointed to a red bird and asked, Is that red? Bradley looked up. Yes, that is red. He's not quite that color. He's much darker. So is that still red? Asked Brumman. Bradley pointed. If that's him, then I would say he's red. You could say a dark red. My sister and mother might say a different color, but red is fine for me. Brumman had turned when Bradley had pointed, and he spotted his dragon. When Bradley had said sister, he turned back to Bradley. I thought the soldiers killed your sister. They did. They killed the older sister, although she wasn't older than me, replied Bradley. But I keep her memory alive inside me, inside my mind. Then all three received. Can I walk with you again? Did I stay gone long enough? When do I walk away from the sun? You can walk with us, little dragon, stated Bradley. Just warn us before you use your fire breath, and no more haircuts. He laughed a little as he looked at the soot on the right side of Brumman's head and the short hair on the left side. Oh, and we will walk away from the sun the second half of the day, or after the sun passes its zenith. Zenith? Asked Brumman and Coulter. Coulter laughed a little, and then he said, He uses funny words. Bradley glanced at Coulter and then explained. Zenith means at the top, or directly above. He motioned with his arm as he pointed and spoke. The sun rises in the east and sets in the west. If we are heading east, then we follow the sun in the morning. But once the sun starts going down in the west, we would keep the sun to our back. That's why you're almost back to the same place, Brumman said to his dragon. But it looks like you followed the sun the whole day. Easy, Brumman, said Bradley. He's a baby. He just hatched. Now I think dragons have links to the knowledge of the dragons before them, but I don't know if they had to be around other dragons for that to work. We're all babies, said Brumman as he motioned to Coulter. How are we supposed to fight that king? My pa was much bigger and stronger than me, and they still took him to the mines, according to my ma. What can we do? Bradley sighed as he glanced at Coulter. We find some place where we can live without King Damontide's soldiers finding us, and then we train. It may take us a few years, or several, but we train until we're at least as strong as your pa. He motioned. And you have a dragon with fire breath, so we train him too. And when we find Coulter's dragon, we train him too. He looked around his small group. Look, right now we have each other, and we're alive. Let's head east until we're far away. Can the king still track us and find us? Asked Coulter. The farther we are, I think the less likely he will follow us, and once the dragons are bigger, then they can fly us back. The two younger ones didn't know what to say, so Bradley turned east once again. As Bradley walked, he thought about the vibrations, and now he would say they were more intense, but they didn't operate at the same speed or with the same rhythm, so he would need to pay attention and know each one distinctly. The younger two boys just followed Bradley, and when Broman passed his dragon, he let his hand glide along the dragon's scales. "Try to keep up," Broman said to Hagar. So Hagar followed behind. Browser had switched his clothes for the soldier's armor, and still no one had come down the hall. Browser remembered to drop the charm for his air wall before he got to it. And then after he got to the end, he started heading down the hall to his left. And after 2 steps, he saw another small hall to the right. But there were no soldiers in that tunnel. He thought to himself, "I'm not here to rescue anyone." But curiosity won, and he went and peeked in the cell. There was no one there, and Browser got an idea. He quickly went back and magically lifted the other 4 soldiers and carried them to the other cell. He magically unlocked the cell and then set the soldiers down next to the wall, so they would be hard or impossible to see if someone was just looking in. Then he closed and magically locked the door. He thought that way, when no one saw the soldiers, they would think the soldiers had taken him down to the mines. The nice thing was, now that he was casting charms, then the words for the charms just started coming to him. Then Browser started sneaking down the hall. After a few minutes, he thought, "Why am I sneaking? That would be suspicious. I should walk like I own the place." After a few steps with his shoulders back and his head held high, he thought, that wasn't right either. Okay, only King Damontate owns the place. I'm just a soldier. Dronstein, where are you? I haven't moved, thought Dronstein. Browser just continued down the hall, and he listened for any other sound. Suddenly he saw something zip past his face, but decided it was a fly or a bug, and he didn't pay it any mind, until 3 of them zoomed into his helmet. He bashed his head against his helmet and whispered, "You get out of there. I have to act normal, and you're distracting me. Go buzz someone else." Then these thoughts entered his mind. "A linker! I found a linker!" "You? Don't you mean we? We found a linker." Yes, of course. What's your name, linker?" Browser sighed to himself and continued down the hall. There was nothing he could do now to act normally. He thought, "I'm Browser. I'm looking for my dragon so we can escape." "Can we help? Oh, this is so exciting!" Then Browser heard armored feet clanging on the stone floor, so he froze. "Don't freeze! Get into the tunnel up on your right. Get in the shadows." Browser did as instructed, but he knew that was sneaking and not normal. The next thing he knew, he couldn't see his hand. He lifted it, and his arm disappeared too. "Be still, would you?" Browser saw more things zip past him, and then some more, and then the sound of boots on the floor was getting nearer and nearer. His heart started racing. He just escaped his cell. He didn't want to die. He thought, just let me breathe fresh air once again. At least let me do that. The group of soldiers walked on past without even glancing his way. Browser let out his breath and breathed a sigh of relief. He raised his hands to look at them, and he still couldn't see them. He stepped in the light and looked down at his body. Whoa, this is remarkable. I knew fairy shifters could change shape, but I didn't know they could go invisible. We call ourselves tailors, not fairies or shifters. Yes, and we can't stay invisible for hours on end. Got it, thought Browser, and he slipped down the hall. Yes, he was invisible, but the soldiers not being able to see him didn't mean they wouldn't hear him. Am I going the right way? Do you know which way to my dragon? Browser felt a buzzing within him and guessed they were communicating among themselves, so he just continued. He figured that if he was going the wrong way, at least he would learn more about the layout of the castle or dungeon or wherever he was at the moment. After a few minutes, he received, "You're going the correct way. Turn left at the next big hall." Okay, thought Browser. Then he thought to Drumsnide, "I have help, and we're getting out of here." Good. I have the chain off my neck. Dragons have magic. Say Barso Arbit. No. Say Barso Arbreet. Yes, that's the word. Say that for the cuffs on your legs. I don't want to take too much time. I already hid soldiers. I know. I've been keeping track of you, and I feel you moving closer, thought Dronstein. Browser's heart started pounding in his chest as the tailors directed him here and there. Then he turned down a hall and knew at the end was his dragon. He paused and thought, this is it. Thank you. Undo your charm for now and keep watch. Sorry. Excuse me. Don't you need to stay invisible? I'll need it later. Stop for now. There are no soldiers around here. Then in the dim light he could see himself once again, and his heartbeat quickened even more. Browser easily undid the lock to the cell and opened the door. Moonlight filtered in from a high window, and Browser could see the 2 front cuffs laying on their sides on the ground. Browser glanced around the small room. What did they do? Build the room around you? It looks and feels that way. I'm not sure how I got in here. I think they gave me some potions because I don't remember past them having me chained to the ground and taking you away. I woke up in here. Browser glanced around again. Too bad I can't make you small like the fairies, the tailors. Then you could ride on my shoulder. Then he automatically thought to Bradley. Hey, Bradley, I need another word. How do I make something small? Bradley jumped and dropped his bundle. He looked around as he bent to pick it up. Both boys were staring at him. A spirit just crossed my grave, he said hurriedly. But you're alive, said Broman. Why do you even have a grave? Bradley glanced at Coulter, and then he looked back at Broman. It's just the same when you get startled for no reason. Hagar jerked up his head up, and thought, there's always a reason. How I know this? Me no know. But my mind says there's always a reason. Just the reason may not be immediately known or can no be shared. Bradley stared at the little dragon. He took in a deep breath and shook his head to himself. Well, I don't immediately know. Then he turned and started walking. He thought, okay, you scared the life out of me, and I had to gather it back. What did you want? The word for small. How do I make something big, like, say, a dragon, be small? Something small, for like a fairy, for, say, 2 or 3 hours. Can you do that? If you give me the word or words, I can. Geez, what do you think? A witch carries her stack of books with her? No, she shrinks them down and puts the whole stack in her pocket or a pouch at her belt. Bradley shook his head to himself. He realized the tone of thoughts were due to the frantic feeling he had from Browser. He thought, Soflin, I need the word for small. If there are several words, then specifically I need the word to make Browser's dragon the size of a fairy for 2 or 3 hours. Soflin came out of her meditative state, which was good because Lydia was sliding down the slope. Since they had come out of the passage, they had been heading down a steep incline. Soflin pulled up on Lydia's hand. Lydia looked at her frightened. Thanks, I nearly went down the whole mountain. Soflin smiled at her. I think you would have hit a tree first. Sit and rest for a bit, and if you have food in that bundle, then eat a bite or two. Soflin carefully sat down. She thought, that's more complicated, as size is a percent. Percent? Percent, portion, like half or a quarter or a tenth. A tenth would be 10%, or in which it would be d pulsium. But 10% or a tenth of a portion of a dragon might still be too big. I'm not sure how small to get to a fairy size. Okay, I get this. Like, half a slice of bread would be... Well, actually, I'm not sure. Whole is always 100%, or 100 portions. Bread, of course, is whole as a loaf or as a slice. But you can't slice a dragon, so you have to be careful, because you want the whole dragon. With your bread, if you want half, then half of 100 would be 50. Yes. Now let's talk bread. If you cut it in half, then you could share it. But what Browser wants is to take the whole slice, Make it small now, and then later still have the whole slice to himself. Ah, I think I understand. So the charm would have to include the 100%. Yes, 100% shrink to represent 10% for 2 hours. Okay, the words. Indelf potium vincil stocil di potium pativ tokit. Can you remember all that? After a few seconds of mentally repeating the phrase, Bradley thought, yes. What about one portion of the 100? Would that be small enough? Perhaps. Side question. Do you have a pocket full of books? So Flynn chuckled a little to herself. Yes, I do. I have a garden too. You'll get there. I'm a boy. Does that make a difference? A boy is called a warlock, a girl a witch. Otherwise, there is no difference. I'd better think to Browser. I think he's having some success at escaping. So Flynn felt Bradley's thoughts leave her. She again thanked the universe for Bradley, and then she looked at Lydia and saw Lydia was offering her a carrot. Why, thank you, dear. She broke it in half and handed the fatter end back. I don't need that much. When we see some wild mushrooms, I'll teach you how to tell the good ones from the poisonous ones. Okay, said Lydia. It sure seems peaceful here. Not at all like in the village. Village life can be peaceful, but we have a lot of work ahead of us to get back to that. Lydia knows about my symbol, stated Lydia. Well, she will know tonight. She will see what I saw my last night in the village, but she will have people around her to help her deal with things. So Flynn watched Lydia. She wasn't sure how Lydia knew that information, but that could possibly mean Lydia had more powers. So she would have to train her to gain the most benefit from those powers. Bradley thought the words to Browser, using 1% instead of 10%. Then he glanced around. The boys were okay, but the sun was going down, and soon it would be too dark to walk through the woods, so he needed to look for a place to rest. Browser had said the charm for the 2 back cuffs to relieve Dronsnod while he waited, and then he said the words Bradley gave him. He didn't really think about which numbers Bradley had given him, but things worked. Browser stood looking down at his teensy-weensy dragon and thought, I should have just shrunk you and not worried with the locks. Well, it worked, so let's get out of here. As they walked down the hall, Browser thought of how Bradley had cast the charm on himself and the witch. Or maybe the witch cast the charm on him. But that didn't help him. So he just thought, okay, there's 2 charms there. Let me make myself small. Browser shrank down seconds before a group of soldiers turned into their hall. Thankfully, they were near the wall, and the soldiers didn't step on them. Browser watched them, and they didn't turn to go down the hall to his dragon's cell. He breathed a sigh of relief. Okay, we need to be outside before we get big. You need to say a zoom charm, thought a tailor. Why? What for? You'll walk too slowly if you're that size. You're smaller than dust. Browser looked down at himself and then up at his dragon. His dragon looked huge, but moments before his dragon fit in the palm of his hand. Dust? He thought. Shook his head to himself. I just feel like we're going to get to the door and be found and brought back to ourselves, and that's if we're lucky. Why are you thinking and feeling such negative things? Yes, why? I thought you wanted fresh air. Visualize escaping to make the escape easier. Browser didn't know what to make with all the tailors thinking around him, but he released the small charm on himself, picked up his dragon, and headed down the hall. He thought to the tailors, some of you fly ahead, so I'll have some warning. Several flew ahead, and Dronside moved his wings back and forth as he sat in Browser's hand. They maneuvered through all the halls until they finally found stairs. They went up an extra tall staircase and made it to the soldiers' area of the castle, which didn't have all the grandeur of the king's part of the castle, but they didn't know that. They just knew that this area was much nicer than the dungeon, especially smell-wise, or lack of stale and rotten odors. Before they hit one turn early on, a tailor told Browser to put the dragon on his shoulder and he would make the dragon invisible. So Browser did, and he walked through the halls with the tailors invisibly buzzing around him. Browser watched the other soldiers and tried to match their posture and their gait, and things were going fairly smoothly, but the longer it took to find an exit, the more nervous Browser became. He had such a pain in his chest that it made it hard to even breathe. Every sound started echoing in his ears. After they reached this level, the tailors knew how to get to the sparring area, so they headed straight there. So it appeared like Browser knew where he was going, and none of the soldiers realized he wasn't one of them, with all the armor and the helmet and the shield and the sword. One tailor was constantly sending him thoughts. "You're doing fine. You look just like them. Just keep walking. 2 more turns. 1 more turn. I see the door. We're almost out." And the tailor had sent thoughts all along since they had 7 more turns. When Browser first heard 7 more turns, his heart almost exploded. But shortly after, it was 6 more turns, then it seemed forever between 5 more turns and 4 more turns. But here he was, within sight of the exit, and he hadn't had to fight at all. When Browser stepped out in the arena area, another soldier was heading his way. "You're late! You're always late! Get your sparring gear and go face your opponent." The soldier motioned. Browser wasn't sure what to do, but the tailor sending him thoughts told him to just go with the plan for now. So Browser walked out to face his opponent. He thought, "I haven't sparred in years, or however long I've been in prison. This isn't a good idea." Browser thought, "I'm confident that I can fly. I'll fly off your shoulder, and then you release the charm on me. You jump on, and we fly away. It will take them time to get to their dragons." "Okay, I like the idea," thought Browser. "We don't! They'll recognize Dronstein," thought a voice. "Sooner or later, someone will realize I'm not in my cell, and the prisoner is missing! Close all exits!" That's my cue. The soldiers dropped their sparring equipment and started running inside. Dronstein flew down to the ground, and Browser tossed his equipment down to the ground like the others, so they would lose interest in him. Then he released the charm on his dragon. The one tailor could not keep Dronstein invisible, so all the soldiers paused when one stopped and pointed. "A dragon! The dragon prisoner is..." Browser quickly mounted Dronstein, and Dronstein leaped into the air, flew away. Only he wasn't as fast as he used to be, and he had stiff joints. But Browser unknowingly cast a charm for the sword and shield to fly up to his hands. This startled Browser at first because he had seen the soldiers running back out to attack him and his dragon. As they flew away, Browser looked back and saw dragons with soldiers coming for them. He thought perhaps once they found him missing, they sent soldiers to the different parts of the castle to prepare everyone. He turned back and started the magic to keep himself on. He would need the magic, especially with no riding gear. But for a brief second, he enjoyed the fresh breeze and being able to fly on his dragon once again. Then he started mentally preparing for the battle that was impending. The tailors down in the arena gathered in a visible circle. At first there were just 9 of them, but others were heading that way, and soon all 48 of them would be there. "What do we do? How should we help? We need Browser. He has to change the new linkers. I wish he got away without the soldiers seeing him. That's it! We make it to where the soldiers can't see him." "That would take double our numbers. We only have 48. Felicity said they concealed Elloni today with just 100. And Browser has to disappear as well. Let's at least fly closer. We can only zoom so far." Browser looked over his shoulder again and realized the other dragons were gaining on him. It would have to be a fight. Excuse me. Because they couldn't outfly these dragons. He pushed thoughts into Dronstein, and Dronstein circled back. Browser counted 10 dragons, but he saw more flying in. He shook his head to himself. He thought, "Bradley, stay connected. I may need magic." Bradley had already stopped because he had spotted an overgrown bush and was telling the boys to crawl under. Hagar had complained that he wouldn't fit, and Bradley told him that he could stick his head under once they were all in. Bradley had pushed the bundle under, and he had just sat down when he received the thoughts. He thought, Magic? He looked at Broman. I need to concentrate for at least some time, so you be the watch guard for us. Broman nodded, and Bradley went back to his thoughts. I'll contact the witch. Soflin, Browser may need magic. What do I do? Soflin and Lydia were very carefully descending the steep incline and were nearly to the bottom. Soflin reached out her hand and grabbed Lydia's sleeve. Stop. It's important. I'll tell you more later. Then Soflin sat down in between a group of 4 trees and pushed her feet against the lowest tree so she wouldn't slide. Lydia followed suit. Magic? Can you do that? I don't know. Browser didn't say why either. Last I knew he was trying to escape. He must be in a battle. Linkers used to have holders, and a holder would share magic. That would enable the linker to go longer, whether battling or casting charms or whatever. King Damantade found those holders first, or at least that's the story. I can't do all of this, thought Bradley. I can barely handle the different vibrations from the 2 linkers with me. You have both boys with you? Oh, excellent. That's great news. Okay, well, Browser needs magic, and we need Browser. If you can't send magic, then use your connections and find someone who can. But time is always of the essence. The words. Majim abrit dot ek tapas a name. There are other words for more precision or a time period or less drain on you, but that should suffice for now. If you don't feel magic leave you, then think with your paw. Aren't you connected with him? And maybe someone in his group can do it. I'm curious about all of this, so I will try to send to you. I don't have a connection with Browser. Bradley looked around the bush, and nothing had changed much, but Hagar's face was very close to his own. No breathing fire, he instructed. Then he thought of Browser and Browser's name as he thought the words to the charm. Browser had done a few charms, and so far 3 soldiers had fallen from their dragon, with their saddle falling behind them. The enormous black dragons were fierce, and the fire they breathed was very hot. Browser tried a charm for a shield because he suddenly remembered the words, and the shield on his arm was getting too hot. He could feel the heat rushing for him and his dragon, and his magic was not strong enough. Then he felt a rush of magic and completed the charm. The breath of the 3 dragons hit the shield he had formed around himself. Thank you, Bradley. That was close. Dragons were flying in and crashing into Dronsnide, which made their flight shaky. Dronsnide had some ideas of his own. It had been a while since he had fought, but not so long that he forgot his techniques. Moreover, the 3 dragons without riders hadn't let up, and they were flying more aggressively. Bradley had fallen back into the bush, and Broman looked at Coulter. He's okay, Broman said. He's just tired. See, he's breathing. So he's alive. Broman didn't know what happened, but he had seen Coulter jumping at every little sound, and Bradley would explain birds and crickets and frogs and wind. So Broman tried to explain, and he felt better himself with the explanation. Hagar thought, I just received information. Bradley used too much magic at once, but I see magic going into him, so him fine like you said. Broman looked at his dragon, and then he looked at Bradley to see if he could see magic, and all he saw was an extra layer of dew on him. He decided not to worry about it. Dronsnide was in the middle of 12 dragons with 8 more flying in. He flipped down and was ready to attack all the underbellies he could. Browser felt the pulses in Dronsnide's muscles, and he knew what was coming. He concentrated on his magic to stay on. Then when Dronsnide flipped and he was upside down, he suddenly couldn't see his hands. He looked at his arms and Dronsnide's neck, all invisible. He thought quickly, flip down, fly east. We're invisible, and they can't see us. Quickly, we can't fight them, and the tailors or fairies as you know them can't keep us invisible long. Go, go, go. By the time Browser was thinking they were invisible the first time, Dronsnide had already flipped down again and was right side up. The dragons above him had crashed into each other instead of him, and he was flying east. He flew quickly out from under the other dragons. He knew sometimes dragons could feel the flight paths of other dragons around them, so he looked over his shoulder as he flew east, and it didn't seem like the other dragons were picking him up. Browser looked over his shoulder too. He wanted to rejoice, but he kept his cheering quiet in his heart. He thanked Bradley and the tailors several times because he knew without them he wouldn't have made it out. He thought, fairies, tailors, if you're thinking with me, then I don't know which way you wanted to go, and I'll have Dronsnide land in the trees as soon as we see a bigger opening. He received, we were going to stay at the castle one more day, and then head to our throstle, or what you might call a community. You can't go back to the castle, thought Browser. We have to, thought one tailor. We're training Libya, and she needs us to know what she needs to learn. Browser paused for a minute and thought about that. Then he received more. We were watching the soldiers who were sparring. I've watched stance, water intake, equipment adjustment, pairing soldiers to fight. I have a few more things to watch, and then we can compare notes, so we have the best information for Libya. The soldiers won't be sparring for days, thought Browser. They will be hunting me, and that leaves me in a quandary because I wanted to find Bradley, but I don't want to leave the soldiers to him, and I can't protect him yet. Browser, thought Dronsnide, I see an area wide enough for me to land. Then let land. We need to let the tailors go their own direction, and that's not mentioning they can't keep us invisible forever. Dronsnide landed, and they found themselves near a cave. Browser dismounted and thanked the tailors. The tailors assured him they could get back to the castle by zooming some, and they left. Browser looked up in the sky and back to the cave several times. How did they miss this? Browser ducked in, and in the dim light he saw burn marks in different places. He squatted down and rubbed his fingers over a burn mark, and he smelled his fingers. Dronsnide had ducked in the cave behind him. Now this is much more comfortable than where I've stayed the last several years. We can't stay here, thought Browser. He walked to the entrance and picked up a trail. Let's follow this trail. We'll cover it and ours as we go. Browser headed out, and Dronsnide followed behind. Browser thought, Bradley, where are you? I'm out. Let's meet up. But he got no answer. Browser wasn't going to follow the trail far, since the sun was descending, but he wanted some distance between him and the cave, where the enemy could land. He didn't know or realize that the cave had a charm cast on it until the baby dragon hatched. Okay, writers, that is the end of chapter 9. Leave a comment below on what you think King Damontate is going to do to try to find Browser. Leave a comment below on what you would think if you were Broman and Bradley just fell back into the bush. Would your explanation to Coulter make you feel better? Or would you still kind of wonder about it? Leave a comment below on what you thought of the tailor's analysis of the bigger man drinking more water. So Libya needs to drink more water to get big. So what do you think of that analysis? I have so much fun writing. And I have fun reading my rough drafts to you, my viewers. I can't wait to read your chapters. So send your chapters to writewithmichaela@gmail.com. Join me Tuesday for writing prompt on our cave story. This will be part 8. Join me Friday for chapter 10 of Elloni's Pride, Breaking Point. More knowledge. Visit my website, bymichaela.com, and read some character bios. If you read some, then leave a comment on which ones you've read. And don't forget to hit the like and subscribe and the bell so we can continue to write together. Thank you for joining me today, one day after our anniversary. It's very exciting. I really appreciate your participation. If you know someone who would like this video, then please share it with them. This is Michaela with Write with Michaela. Bye for now.